15 accountants failed, but this poor girl knew the dark truth that saved a millionaire's fortune. The office was drenched in desperation, the air crackled with tension as each accountant in their crisp suits, heads bowed, faced the ugly truth of failure. It was the worst financial collapse in the city's history. A business empire worth millions crumbled like a house of cards, and the million-dollar question loomed: what now? Among them stood Sophie, a junior assistant with a cloud of uncertainty hovering over her head. Only she knew the secret, a dark truth hidden beneath the mountain of spreadsheets and percentages that could shift the very tide of this disaster. Sophie could feel her heart thumping in her chest, the weight of the world pressing down on her shoulders. Shadows danced in the corners, whispering rumors of betrayal and reckless gambling by the firm's higher-ups. And yet, for all their education and prestige, not one of those experienced accountants saw what she had uncovered. Their failure was a haunting specter, circling above, ready to snatch away their futures. But Sophie was not like them. She was the girl who dug deeper, unearthing secrets many would prefer remained buried. The company had been hiding thousands, numbers that misled investors and ensured their trust remained unbroken until now. There was something tangled in the mystery of it all. The smell of burnt coffee mixed with the sweet scent of desperation filled her nostrils, creating a heady concoction that made her dizzy. She squeezed her eyes shut for a moment, envisioning the day she stumbled upon the truth. A random email, a misdirected file, something so innocuous, yet deadly in what it revealed. A phantom of panic clawed at her throat. Could sharing this secret save the fortune of a man who barely knew her name? Or would it doom her to the same fate as those failed accountants, shunned and silenced? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. Sophie knew she stood at a crossroads. The truth pulsed in her veins, stronger than any fear of repercussions. And as she glanced around the room at the defeated faces, the desire to save their sinking ship surged within her. But could she convince them of what she found? What if they rejected her for this unexpected insight, thinking of her merely as the assistant who didn't belong? Tension coiled tighter in her chest, leaving a lump in her throat. One choice could change everything, but just then, an icy sensation crawled up her spine. Her phone buzzed violently on the table, breaking the heavy silence. The screen lit up with an unknown number, and all at once, her gut twisted. Could it be the very messenger of doom? It wasn't just any call, it was a connection to the truth she held so closely. With no time to waste, she instinctively reached for it, the weight of her decision pressing heavily on her heart. What lay on the other end could either rescue her from this turmoil or doom her entirely. Sophie took a deep breath, poised on the edge of revelation. This was just the beginning, and every heartbeat pounded with the daunting question: would she step into the light or be consumed by the shadows? Sophie hesitated. Each vibration from the phone felt like an alarm bell ringing in her chest. The office was silent, every eye was drawn to her. She could sense the weight of their expectations pressing down like a heavy fog. What if I'm wrong? She thought. What if I destroy what little trust one have? Taking a breath, she answered the call, her heart racing as the voice on the other end crackled through the speaker. It was deep, authoritative. Sophie, we need to talk. It's about the audit discrepancies. Panic shot through her. How did this person know her name? Who is this? She asked, trying to maintain a semblance of courage. Let's just say I have a vested interest in protecting what isn't exposed yet. The files you found, they're not just numbers. They're a lot more dangerous than you think. Her skin prickled. The truth danced mockingly just beyond her grasp. What do you want from me? Sophie demanded, a shaky resolve taking over. Meet me tonight at the Mercury, a place your colleagues avoid. I'll reveal everything. But be careful, someone is watching you. The call disconnected, leaving her breathless. A rush of adrenaline surged through her veins as she turned to her colleagues, their faces a mix of confusion and curiosity. Nothing, she stammered, quickly shutting her phone. But inside her, chaos reigned. She could feel the urge to confide in someone, yet fear of the unknown kept her silent. Sophie could sense that shadows lurked in the corners, hidden threats drifting just outside of her vision. As the night wore on, she wrestled with her thoughts, mapping out the intricate web of deceit surrounding her office. This wasn't just about numbers, it was about survival. If she exposed the truth, she might save lives. Or plunge everyone, including herself, into ruin. When the clock struck 5, she found herself glancing up at the office lights flickering above. The others were shuffling out, their voices a dull thrum. Sophie? A familiar voice called. It was Paul, the office manager, concern etched on his face. You're still here? You should leave. She opened her mouth to respond, but the words felt foreign on her tongue. Instead, she forced a smile and nodded. I'm just wrapping up. As soon as she was alone, the fear of the unknown settled heavier on her shoulders. Meeting at the Mercury felt like rolling the dice in a game that could end fatally. But what choice did she have? Ignoring the call was not an option, the truth was the only anchor she had in this storm. The minutes stretched like hours, and as she prepared herself to leave, doubt began to claw at her insides. What if this was a trap? What if revealing the truth led to her downfall, or worse, implicated the very people she worked with? With steely resolve, she stepped outside into the cool evening air. The streetlights flickered as she made her way toward the Mercury, shadows lurking in every corner. Each step echoed the battle in her mind. Was she ready to expose a crooked empire built on lies, or would she choose to keep the silence that had allowed her to survive to this point? When she finally approached the bar's entrance, the door swung open, a chill of uncertainty washing over her. Would she unravel the mystery, or would this be the moment everything fell apart? Inside, the dim light cast shadows on troubled faces, and Sophie felt the weight of her decision looming larger than ever, as she caught sight of a figure waiting by the bar. A figure that looked alarmingly familiar. Suddenly, the reality hit her like a tidal wave. What was at stake was far more than numbers. It was her life hanging in the balance, and the truth felt both like salvation and a sentence. But in this darkness, something deeper tugged at her. What if the real danger had been lurking closer than she ever imagined? She needed answers, desperately, but was she prepared for the truth waiting on the other side? Sophie stepped through the door, her senses sharpening like blades. The Mercury was dimly lit, the atmosphere thick with clandestine conversations and unspoken fears. It felt wrong, like walking into a lion's den with a single slice of meat. Her gaze was drawn to the figure at the bar, silhouetted against the muted light. It was him. Daniel. The head of accounting. The man she had trusted just days ago. Panic threatened to rise again in her throat. What is he doing here? She thought, heart racing, thoughts spiraling. Daniel turned slightly, a smirk playing on his lips as their eyes met. Was it just her imagination, or was there something predatory in his gaze? A lump formed in her throat, and she fought the urge to spin on her heel and run. But it was too late for that now. Glad you could make it, he said, his voice smooth yet carrying an edge that sent a shiver down her spine. I figured you'd want to know what the real game is. I'm here for answers, she managed, steadier than she felt. And I'm not playing games. His laughter rang hollow in the charged air, echoing around the small bar. No one plays games, Sophie. This is real life. The stakes are high. He leaned closer, his eyes gleaming. You saw the numbers. But you don't see the players. What did he mean? She remembered the audit files, the numbers dancing like ghosts in her mind. The more she thought about them, the more tangled the web became. How do you know about the discrepancies? She asked, fighting to keep her voice even. Let's just say I have my sources, he replied, a knowing glint in his eyes as he leaned back, crossing his arms. Those discrepancies are just the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot more lurking underneath. The bar's low hum faded into silence for Sophie as she processed his words. Her heart raced. She needed to find out what he meant, but would it come at a cost she couldn't afford to pay? Stop playing games, Daniel. What are you trying to say? The smirk vanished, replaced by an intensity that made Sophie feel exposed. You think you're the first to notice? We all have our roles. I'm just trying to keep the ship steady. And you, Sophie, you can either help us or become a casualty of this storm. You think I'm afraid? She shot back, eyes narrowing. If I wanted to play along, I wouldn't have come here. His chuckle was dark, tinged with sarcasm. Oh, I think you're terrified. There are bigger forces at play here than your little office audit. If you dig too deep, you might just uncover a truth you wish you hadn't. What are you hiding? The words slipped out before she could stop herself, urgency rising like bile in her throat. Daniel leaned in closer. Meet the right people, and you'll understand. But they won't be kind to someone like you, Sophie. You might find yourself wishing you'd stayed uninformed. Those words sent a bolt of fear through her. She felt the cold sweat prickling at the back of her neck. Is that a threat? Consider it a warning, he said, standing up, his voice lowering to a fierce whisper. You're not the only one looking for answers. Trust me, there are eyes everywhere. Her mind raced, digging through the layers of what he was saying. What did he know? Who else was involved? The moment felt like it was about to fracture, a wound festering just beneath the surface. As he moved to leave, Sophie grabbed his arm. You can't just walk away. I need to know the truth. He paused, studying her with a predator's gaze. The truth? His smile returned, chilling her to the bone. You might not be ready for it. But I can introduce you. Just remember, be careful what you wish for. In a heartbeat, he was gone, leaving her with more questions than answers. The thrum of the bar returned, but it felt heavier now, laden with secrets. Shadows danced across the walls, and Sophie knew the true hunt was only beginning. What had she walked into? And how would she ever find a way out? In that moment, she realized the truth was only a whisper away, but it might cost her everything. Could she pay that price? And as she pondered, the unsettling sense that she was being watched crept back, prickling along her spine. Sophie's breath hitched as the weight of Daniel's words resonated in her head. The bar swayed back to life around her, blaring conversations mixing with bouts of laughter that felt sickeningly hollow. Shadows loomed larger now, and a few eyes glanced her way, as if they sensed her turmoil. She slid onto a stool, desperate to regain her composure. The bartender eyed her curiously, and she forced a smile, hoping it concealed the riot of emotions churning inside. But her focus was fully on Daniel's ominous warning. The truth? What truth? Who were the players lurking in the shadows? Her fingers drummed anxiously against the bar. She couldn't shake the feeling she was being hunted, that there was a predator somewhere beyond the dim lights of the Mercury. Can I get you something? The bartender asked, breaking her reverie. Just water, please, Sophie replied, her voice wavering slightly. She stared into her glass when it arrived, noting the way the water rippled. It was just water, but it felt like a lifeline in a sea of chaos. As she took a sip, her phone buzzed violently against the counter, startling her. The screen flashed, unknown, a tickle of unease shot through her. She hesitated, but picked it up anyway, heart hammering, and pressed it to her ear. Hello? She said, voice barely above a whisper. Meet me outside, came a rough voice, the sound almost swallowed by the bar's ambience. And bring your courage. Who is this? She glanced around, feeling the weight of eyes upon her again. Someone who knows the real story, the voice said, a mix of urgency and intimidation in that single echo. You'll want to hear what I have to say. Trust me. Just like that, the line went dead. She stared at the phone, pulse racing. Was this a trap? Was she walking straight into a danger she could not fathom? But the mix of fear and curiosity ignited something within her. She set her glass down, standing on shaky legs. There was no way she could ignore this opportunity. She had to find out what was hidden beneath those numbers, beneath Daniel's smirk. Stepping outside, the cool air bit at her skin, but she welcomed it. It sharpened her focus. The streetlights cast a murky glow, and shadows danced along the pavement, twisting into grotesque shapes. She nudged her way through the thin crowd and panned the area, seeking out the mysterious voice that called her here. Then she spotted a figure leaning against a lamppost, obscured by the shadows. "You came," he said, his tone dripping with a mixture of relief and urgency. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice steady, though her heart raced in her chest. "Just a friend," he replied, stepping into the light. Sophie blinked in surprise. The man looked familiar, too familiar. Marcus, a fellow employee from the finance department, his face lined with worry and tension. "What do you want?" she demanded, wanting to shake off the shrill anxiety creeping back in. "I know what's happening, Sophie. The discrepancies, the missing funds, it goes deeper than you think. The whole company is at risk. Daniel, he's not who he says he is." Panic clawed back at her. "What are you talking about? You can't just drop bombs and expect me to be calm. What do you know?" He ushered her to a quieter corner away from prying ears. "Let's talk inside. It's not safe here." "Inside where?" she pressed, dread rising. The last thing she wanted was to be cornered again. "Back into the Mercury. There's someone there who can help," he insisted urgently. "And trust me, you'll want to hear what they know." Sophie swallowed hard. Could she trust Marcus? The shadows loomed over her like a thick fog, and the risk felt monumental. "Okay," she finally said, heart pounding. "Lead the way." As they stepped back into the bar, the feeling of unease intensified. She had crossed into a world filled with secrets, and now it felt like the darkness was tightening around her. What more would she uncover? And who would pay the price for the truth? The Mercury enveloped Sophie and Marcus like a thick smoke, swirling with an energy that felt more sinister than before. The bar, once a refuge filled with laughter, pulsed with unseen tension. Sophie glanced back, half expecting to see someone lurking in the shadows, waiting for her to turn her back. Heart racing, she followed Marcus to a secluded booth in the far corner. "Sit," he commanded gently but firmly. It wasn't just a suggestion, it was a necessity. Sophie slid into the booth, her fingers fidgeting with the sleeves of her sweater. Everywhere she looked, patrons were wrapped in their own dramas, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing just steps away. "Okay, tell me," she urged, wanting to cut straight to the truth. Marcus leaned in closer, lowering his voice to a whisper. "You know those financial reports? The discrepancies are not just mistakes. Someone's manipulating the numbers. Daniel's involved, but it's bigger than that. I have proof." "Proof of what?" Sophie's brow furrowed as anxiety gnawed at her. "You're talking about my job, Marcus. This is serious stuff. It means he's covering something up, and if we don't act fast, everything will collapse: our jobs, the company, possibly worse." "But what do you want from me?" she pressed, desperate for clarity as shadows of doubt began to creep in. "I need you to trust me," Marcus replied, a hint of desperation seeping into his voice. "I've been digging around. I found some emails, sensitive information that ties it all together. But I can't do this alone. I need your help to expose him." Her stomach twisted. Was this really happening? The weight of his words shook her, and for a moment, fear clutched at her throat. Could she really go against someone like Daniel? She had seen how much power he wielded in the office. Just then, the bartender approached, breaking the mounting tension. "What can I get for you two?" he asked, eyeing them with a mix of curiosity and suspicion. "2 waters, please," Marcus replied, his voice steady. As the bartender walked away, Sophie felt the air around them grow heavy with unspoken threats. "What if he finds out?" she whispered urgently. "We could lose everything." "He will if we don't act first," Marcus insisted, his eyes locked onto hers. "Sophie, remember the last quarterly meeting? The way Daniel brushed aside the questions about the fund allocations? He's hiding something huge. And you saw how nervous he was. It's not just about the money. It's personal." Her heart sank. She had noticed those odd moments, tensions behind polite smiles. Could this really be the unraveling of their lives? At that moment, the door swung open, and a blast of cold air swept through the bar. A hooded figure stepped inside, scanning the room with a predator's gaze. Sophie's breath hitched, an instinctual fear jolting through her. Something about this figure felt dangerous, almost electric. "Marcus, look!" she hissed, nodding discreetly toward the newcomer. Marcus turned, tension tightening in his shoulders. The figure took a few slow steps into the bar, moving like a shadow across the floor, before he seemed to lock eyes on Sophie and Marcus. A chill snaked up Sophie's spine as recognition flickered in the depths of his hood. "Get down!" Marcus shouted suddenly. Sophie dropped instinctively, feeling the rush of adrenaline course through her. The world around her spun into chaos, but the sight of the hooded figure approaching gave her a new sense of urgency. They were running out of time. What did he want? Who was he? As whispers stirred and chaos unfolded around her, one thought blared through her mind: when the truth emerged, would they all be prepared for the fallout? Sophie pressed her back against the cool faux leather of the booth, her heart hammering like a drum as she stole quick glances at the mysterious figure. Was it a coincidence that they were being hunted? The air crackled with anxiety, the bar's laughter fading into a haunting silence. The bartender, noticing the change in atmosphere, looked around as though trying to gauge the threat looming over the room. "Who is that?" Sophie whispered, her throat dry with fear. Marcus's expression twisted into a mix of concern and determination. "I don't know, but we can't stay here. He's looking for something and I think it's us." Panic gripped her chest. What did we get ourselves into? Before Marcus could respond, the hooded figure took a decisive step toward their booth. Each footfall echoed in Sophie's ears, heavy like lead. She could see his features now, a scar cutting through his cheek, steely eyes glinting with an unsettling hunger. "Marcus!" she gasped, instinctively inching deeper into the booth. "I need you to trust me," Marcus urged again, steeling himself. "We need to get out of here now." With that, he sprang to his feet and grabbed her hand, yanking her up. They burst from the booth, sweeping through the crowd, hearts racing in unison. Sophie barely registered the startled faces surrounding them, the patrons now aware of the palpable fear that had gripped the bar. "Hold on!" Marcus shouted, pulling her toward the back exit. They sprinted for the door, adrenaline fueling their escape. Sophie's breath came in quick gasps, the chill of the nearby winter night biting at her exposed skin. Behind them, the distant sound of chair scraping and voices rising in confusion resonated through the bar. "Do you have a plan?" she managed to ask, glancing over her shoulder. "I'll explain later," he replied, breaking through the exit and into the alley behind the bar. The biting wind whipped around them, but there was no stopping now. They were on the run from an unseen predator. Marcus led them to a side street where the shadows were darker and the cobblestones slick with rain. He stopped, breathing hard, resting his hands on his knees as he steadied himself. Sophie fumbled for composure. "He wasn't just looking at us, was he? It was like he knew about Daniel." Marcus nodded, wiping sweat from his brow. "That's what I'm afraid of. This isn't just about him, it's about everything Daniel's hiding. My proof, Sophie, it connects back to him. If that guy is working for Daniel, we needed to get away. Fast. Questions cascaded through her mind, but the throbbing panic drowned them out. How do we make sure he doesn't find us? We need to find a safe place. I know a contact who can help, but it's risky. Just as he finished speaking, a resounding crash echoed in the distance, sending a new wave of dread through her. Sophie's eyes widened as she turned her gaze toward the bar's entrance. The hooded figure emerged, framed by the doorway, scanning the street like a predator on the prowl. It's too late, she breathed, her thoughts racing. Run! Marcus shouted, yanking her away from the alley's end just as the figure stepped into the street. They bolted deeper into the darkened maze of the city, nearly colliding with parked cars as fear propelled them forward. Every breath felt heavy with uneasiness. The night was cloaked not just in shadows but in uncertainty. Who were they really running from, and what unseen forces were working against them? As they fled, questions danced in Sophie's mind, glaring and insistent. The danger wasn't just their employer anymore, it stretched far beyond to a threat she couldn't even fathom. And as they turned a corner, her resolve faltered when she heard a voice echo behind them, chilling her blood. Don't think you can run forever. As the breath caught in her throat, one question loomed above the chaos: what awaited them when the chase finally ended? They pushed through the narrow alley, the cold air biting at Sophie's skin. Marcus pulled her along, his grip firm and reassuring, but fear clawed at her insides. The thief they were dodging wasn't just a man in a hood, he was a specter that darkened their escape with every second that passed. Sophie glanced back, desperately searching for any sign of pursuit. Her stomach twisted at the thought of what might happen if they got caught. Out of breath, she felt the wheels of her mind spin, struggling to process reality. What does he want with us? She panted, struggling to keep pace with Marcus's long strides. I don't know, Marcus gasped, glancing at her briefly before his eyes darted back ahead. But we have to keep moving. He's using us as bait to get to Daniel. Why? Panic surged through her, adding weight to her already thudding heart. What does he have to gain? I told you, there's something bigger at stake. It's not just about us. It's about an empire that Daniel's built on lies. If that man is working for him, then everything we've uncovered is in jeopardy. Anger bubbled up in his voice, a fierce heat against the desperate chill of the night. Suddenly, Marcus skidded to a halt, dragging Sophie to a stop as well. They stood in the shadows of a crumbling building, the faint sounds of the city behind them growing dimmer. We need to lie low, he whispered, scanning the dim street. Sophie's heart was racing, and she tried to calm her breathing. They couldn't afford to attract any attention. Is there a place we can hide? She asked. There's an old warehouse nearby. It's abandoned, but we can wait there until it's safe to move again. He pointed to a nearly hidden entrance, barely visible through the green-black night. It's not far. Without waiting for her reply, he led her down a side path that veered toward the looming structure. As they approached, the door creaked ominously under Marcus's cautious touch. Sophie held her breath, listening for any sound beyond the whispers of the evening breeze. They slipped inside, and Sophie blinked as her eyes adjusted to the dim light seeping through broken windows. Inside, the air was stale, musty with the scent of damp wood and rust. Boxes stacked high around them made the space feel like a labyrinth. Sophie felt her anxiety kicking in again. It was both intimidating and oddly comforting to be away from the street. Keep quiet, Marcus murmured, leading her deeper into the shadows of the warehouse. They settled behind a stack of crates, the wooden surfaces rough against Sophie's back. What if he follows us? She whispered, anxiety curling around her like a thick fog. Then we'll be ready. We can't let him catch us off guard, Marcus replied, his tone steady, although she could see the tension coiling in his muscles. Moments stretched into heartbeats, each breath like a drum in the quiet. She felt the pulse of her own fear, the weight of uncertainty suffocating in the stagnant air. Suddenly, a crash echoed outside, slicing through the deafening silence like a knife. "Did you hear that?" Sophie's voice trembled. "Yes," Marcus replied, leaning closer to the edge of their hiding spot. "Stay put." Sophie gripped his arm, her nails digging in as another crash sounded, closer this time. "What if Sho?" he hissed, eyes narrowing as he strained to listen. The thud of footsteps approached. Sophie's heart raced, the sound growing louder as it echoed in the spacious emptiness. Each step felt like a countdown, building an unseen tension that pulled tight like a noose around her thoughts. She wanted to scream. She wanted to run. The door swung open, sending a flickering shadow across the floor. A tall figure stepped inside, scanning the room with an unsettling calm. "Don't play games with me," a voice rumbled, deep and filled with menace. "I know you're in here and I will find you." Sophie's breath hitched, fear igniting her veins. Who was this man, and why did he sound so confident? The shadows closed around them like darkness breathing, swallowing hope whole. As they held their breath in unison, Marcus leaned in, his eyes locking onto hers. "They're not just after us, they want everything. Daniel's empire maybe, but so much more. If they succeed, it could change everything." Sophie felt the gravity of his words settle like lead in her stomach. Then, through the dread, a thought ignited a desperate surge of hope mixed with determination. "We have to fight back, we can't let them win," she whispered fiercely. He nodded, but the haunting sound of another crash cut through their resolve. "Are you ready?" he asked, determination set in his jaw. She took a shaky breath, nerves trembling at the edges. "Let us end this." As they braced themselves, the tension ratcheted up, pushing against the fragile boundaries of their resolve. They were on the edge of a precipice, but what lay beyond? A lesson learned in fear, a truth waiting to be uncovered, one way or another. With every steadying heartbeat, they prepared to confront the darkness that loomed ahead. Would they emerge victorious, or fall victim to a battle far beyond their understanding? The figure paused, shadow dancing in the dim light as Marcus and Sophie pressed against the cold, unforgiving wood of the crates. Every fiber of Sophie's being screamed to run, to flee from the chilling presence that had broken into their sanctuary. She gripped Marcus's arm tighter, her heart pounding like a war drum. "Where are you hiding?" the man called out, his voice low and taunting. Each syllable wrapped around Sophie's throat like a vice. What did he know? How close were they to the truth? "Silence," Marcus whispered, eyes glinting with resolve. He was already scanning their surroundings, searching for a weapon, for an advantage. The intruder stepped further in, boots crunching over glass and debris. He raised a flashlight, the beam cutting through the room and casting long, sharp shadows that danced like phantoms. Sophie held her breath, praying he wouldn't shine it in their direction. Then, it happened. The beam of light landed directly on a rusted metal pipe, reflecting a shimmer of gold at its edge. The man paused, curiosity flickering in his eyes. "Ah, what is this?" he muttered, stepping toward the pipe. Seizing the moment, Marcus shifted just a fraction, his eyes darting toward Sophie, urging her to remain still. She could see the tension in his body, he was calculating their next move carefully. She felt the burning fear, but alongside it, the electric rush of adrenaline pulsing through her veins. "You think you're clever, hiding away in the dark," the man continued, almost mocking. "But everyone hides something in the dark." He chuckled darkly, then lowered the flashlight, illuminating a small area of the floor. A glimmer caught his eye. Sophie's breath quickened. It was the necklace she had dropped during their frantic escape, glinting alluringly in the dimness. "Marcus, we need to don't move," Marcus hissed just as the man's sharp eyes locked onto them. "Found you," he shouted, lunging towards their hiding place. In that split second, Sophie understood. This was not just about them, it was about the secrets they held regarding Daniel's empire. They had to fight, had to push past their fear. Heart pounding, she grabbed a nearby broken plank from the floor and held it tight, her knuckles white. "Now!" Marcus shouted, and before she realized what was happening, he was charging at the intruder, fists raised. Sophie dashed out too, swinging the makeshift weapon with all her might. The plank met the man's shoulder, the impact sending a jolt through her arm. But he barely flinched. This was no ordinary thug. "Pathetic," he growled, spinning to face her. And in that moment, Sophie saw a flash of something in his eyes, danger mixed with recognition. "You're connected to Daniel," he snarled, the first crack in his composure showing. "You think you can escape the consequences of his lies?" Before she could nod or reply, there was a sharp sound, metal clanging against metal. The load sequence of footsteps behind them. Panic erupted anew within her. "Marcus, back to the exit!" Sophie screamed, pushing against the surging tide of fear. Marcus tightened his grip on the man's collar, delivering another blow before retreating. "This isn't over," he shouted, urgency cracking his voice as they scrambled toward the exit, every instinct urging them to break free, but the doorway they had entered loomed larger, with more figures emerging from the shadows. Voices echoed, unfamiliar yet laced with intent. "You're not getting out," one of them warned, and as he stepped forward, Sophie froze. Behind the half-light, she could make out a badge. Not just thugs, the authorities. They were surrounded. Impossible options flashed through her mind. What do they want? Were they here to capture them or something far worse? With her heart racing, the man who had taunted them smirked, stepping back to reveal himself with confidence. "Time to face the truth you've been running from." And then, as chaos enveloped the warehouse, darkness threatened to close in again. Sophie felt the weight of something far greater than just their lives looming just beyond her grasp. Suddenly, a flicker of hope ignited in the haze of fear. "We can turn this around, Marcus," she whispered fiercely, desperation blending with defiance in her voice. But was it too late? As the figures moved, the tension coiling tighter, she wasn't sure they would escape this time. They stood at the precipice of revelation and doom. Would they uncover the truth they sought, or would the empire of lies pull them under forever? The air pulsed with an unbearable tension as Sophie and Marcus faced the imposing figures around them. Flashlights pierced the darkness, illuminating rows of worn faces, hardened by experience and shadowed in uncertainty. The tangle of authority felt suffocating, the weight of expectations heavy on Sophie's chest. She could hardly breathe, every instinct screamed for them to flee, yet escape seemed impossible. "Hands where I can see them," one of the officers barked, their voice slicing through the thick atmosphere like a knife. Marcus and Sophie raised their hands slowly, the broken plank clattering to the floor. Fear snaked up Sophie's spine, mingling with anger. They weren't criminals. They were trying to uncover the truth, but in this moment, truth felt like a distant dream. "Back away from the man," the officer demanded, pointing toward the intruder who had pursued them into this nightmare. The man chuckled, a low, mocking sound. "You're too late. They're not the ones you should be looking for. It's you who needs to worry." The figures shifted uncomfortably, uncertain, caught between duty and intrigue. Sophie could see a glint of recognition in the eyes of one officer as they scanned Marcus and her. The tension thickened. They hadn't just stumbled into trouble. They were pieces on a board that was rapidly unfurling. "What do you mean?" one officer finally asked, stepping forward, eyes narrowed suspiciously. The man smiled, a predatory grin that sent a chill racing down Sophie's spine. "Daniel's empire isn't just built on lies, it's stitched together with fear. And you," he pointed directly at Marcus, "you're digging too deep." Before anyone could respond, he moved, darting towards the exit. The officers shouted in confusion, instinctively raising their weapons, but Sophie was quicker. "Marcus! Now!" she blurted out, her mind racing. They needed to act. If they hesitated, they would lose everything. Without thinking, Sophie shoved past Marcus, bolting toward the escape route at the far end of the room. She could hear Marcus right behind her, feet pounding against the cold concrete. "Stop!" Someone yelled, the urgency of the command laced with shock. They burst through a doorway, slamming into the darkened corridor beyond. Sophie's heart raced. They needed to get out, to find safety, to regroup. "Which way?" she gasped, desperate to catch her breath. "Right," Marcus said, his voice steady despite the chaos. "We'll find the stairs and get to the roof." But then there was a flash of footsteps behind them, the sounds reverberating off the walls. Sophie risked a glance back, her hands trembling. The figures were close, relentless as shadows pursuing them through the night. "Faster!" she urged, but the weight of dread began to settle in her stomach. What if they were caught? What if the truth was lost forever? They turned a corner and skidded to a stop at an abandoned loading dock. In the dim light, worn crates loomed like sentinels, and a faint glimmer on the ground caught Sophie's eye. The necklace. It was the very piece she thought she'd lost. "Leave it," Marcus insisted, pulling at her arm, but she couldn't. It felt essential, a tether to everything that was at stake. "I have to have it. Now is not the time for souvenirs," he yelled, but Sophie was already crouching, her fingers brushing against the cool metal. As she snatched it up, a piercing alarm began to echo through the warehouse, loud, unforgiving. Marcus's eyes widened in alarm. "We have to move." But before they could react, the intruder reappeared, blocking the exit. His grin widened as realization dawned upon him. "You really thought you could escape?" The air crackled with tension, the realization crashing down on them. With nowhere to go, every option thinning, Sophie felt the icy grip of despair taking hold. "Everything you think you know, it's about to change," he taunted, stepping closer as the alarm blared, drowning out everything else. Sophie clenched the necklace in her fist, determination igniting her veins. "What do you know?" she challenged, heart racing against her ribs. "We'll see how much you value your life when the truth comes crashing down," he said, and in that moment, Sophie realized that the game was only just beginning. Would they find a way to turn the tide, or would the weight of truth bury them under its crushing force? Sophie gripped the necklace tightly as chaos unfolded around her. The piercing alarm reverberated in her ears, amplifying the adrenaline coursing through her veins. She looked up, facing their pursuer, who loomed like a specter of their worst fears. The shadows danced, and as he stepped closer, she could see the glint of ambition in his eyes, a promise of danger that wrapped around her heart like an iron chain. "Let us make a deal," he said, his voice smooth, compelling. "This truth you seek, it won't free you, it will ruin you. But keep quiet, and I'll let you walk away." Sophie's instincts screamed to flee, yet a steely resolve emerged. This man had no idea what she was willing to risk. "What are you protecting?" she demanded, swallowing the lump in her throat. "Just money? Or is it more than that?" Behind her, Marcus shifted uneasily. "You can't negotiate with him, Sophie. He's dangerous." "Dangerous? I've lived in danger since day one," she shot back, standing tall, holding onto the necklace like a lifeline. "You think I'm afraid of you?" The man chuckled, a low sound filled with menace. "You will be." And then, without warning, he lunged toward them. Instinct kicked in. Sophie dodged, pushing past him as he stumbled. "Run, Marcus!" she shouted, their feet pounding against the concrete floor like a heartbeat in a dead silence. They barreled forward, finding themselves in a narrow hallway. The wail of the alarm echoed behind them, relentless and unforgiving. "Where's the exit?" she gasped. "Keep going," Marcus urged, his eyes darting ahead. As they turned another corner, they found a door leading to the roof. They flung it open, emerging into the cold night, a gust of wind washing over them like a cleansing wave. The city sprawled beneath them, a maze of lights and shadows. They were momentarily free, but only for a moment. Behind them, the door slammed open, and the intruder stepped onto the roof, silhouetted against the foggy light. "Thought you could escape?" he taunted, his menacing presence casting a long shadow over them. Sophie could feel the panic rising again. "What does Daniel have to do with this?" she shouted, surprising herself with the strength in her voice. "You're just a pawn." His eyes narrowed, fury flashing like lightning in the storm. "Maybe the real game is to see who ends up holding the pieces." At that moment, Marcus grabbed Sophie's arm, pulling her back as the intruder's hand flashed, revealing a weapon glinting in the dark. "You really think you can stop me?" he sneered. Before he could pull the trigger, Sophie acted on pure instinct. She hurled the necklace at him. It spiraled through the air, a shining beacon of truth. It struck him in the chest, and for a split second, confusion washed over his face. Seizing the opportunity, Marcus lunged, tackling him to the ground. The weapon skittered across the rooftop, away from them both. Sophie's heart raced as she watched the two struggle. "Get the necklace!" Marcus shouted, struggling for dominance. Sophie scrambled to retrieve it, her fingers wrapping around ice-cold metal. As she stood, she realized this could be the key to unraveling everything. "Wait!" she yelled, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife. "What do you know? What are you scared of?" The intruder froze, Marcus pinning him down with sheer force. Breathing heavily, he looked up at Sophie with a blend of anger, fear, and begrudging respect. "Daniel wants to keep this all hidden. Once the truth comes out, it all unravels careers, reputations, his empire." Sophie felt a rush of boldness. "Then let it unravel," she declared, her eyes fierce. "You have no hold over us. We'll expose this." With a final surge of energy, Marcus stood, finally able to wrestle control from the man. "You're right," he said, breathless. "Your power lies in the shadows, but we're stepping into the light." The intruder spat, struggling against Marcus's grip. "You don't know what you're getting into. You're just a girl and a newbie accountant." Sophie leaned closer, her voice fierce. "I'm just a girl who found the truth. And I'm not afraid to show it." With that, she turned back toward the edge of the roof, clutching the necklace in one hand. Behind her, Marcus still held the man down, effectively trapping him. "Let us end this," she shouted, her determination ringing clear. Together, they would take down this empire built on lies and deceit. They would expose Daniel for who he really was. As dawn began to break, a pale light spread across the horizon, casting a newfound hope. Sophie felt the weight lifting, the chains of fear breaking. They were ready to fight for the future, for the truth, and for each other. Together, arm in arm, they forged ahead, ready to take back everything that was rightfully theirs, and as they stepped toward the door leading down into the city, Sophie felt her heart swell. This was just the beginning. No more shadows. Only the light. Now, here's where I need you to take action. You need to subscribe right now to keep up with these exciting stories as they unfold. Don't miss a single twist or turn. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and show your support for mind-blowing stories like this. Flood the comments section below with your thoughts, reactions, and theories on what happens next. You know I love hearing from you. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Let us spread the word together.